Hi everyone. I'm sure everyone is following the elections. We are doing this live stream. You can watch it on YouTube, also on Twitch. I'm Luigi Morris. I'm a member of The Voice, and our idea is to spend half an hour, um seeing what are the results in New York City. We're gonna wait a little more for more people to join, but these elections are being followed not only in New York City, but across the country and many other countries too. There is a lot of interest in to see what's gonna be the result of this. So I'm gonna follow to see what's the result. If Mamdani is gonna be the winner of this election, what's gonna that mean in the future for the Democratic Party. So yes, stay with us. Let's see how all this goes, and I'm gonna be sharing the updates, how the polls are doing. Hopefully, we can get also some info from how people is celebrating or maybe sad, depending on the result, on which side are you on. So yes, and we're gonna call also some other members of the voice to talk, to think more about the big picture of this election, to think uh, first impressions and see how people is responding. We have the right wing that is a little upset with what's going on. A sector of liberals and the left that are very excited, and others that are more critical of the his candidacy. But as us that we relate to the excitement that a lot of people is showing to see something different, than the far right and the Trump gaining space. So feel free to use the chat on YouTube, the chat on Twitch too. You can put your comments, your ideas. You can ask me questions, and I can try to answer as better as much as I can. Um, so today this is not only important because of the election here in New York City, but it means a political test of how people is feeling about the this first year of Trump, about his policies, and also about how people feels about the Democrats. As not only they lost the last election, but also they have been struggling a lot to find a new strategy, a new idea to bring back people to their party. And as we will discuss later, you know, Mamdani plays a role also in that. But there are a lot of other things going on in New Jersey, Virginia, California, Pennsylvania, Texas. There are different voting going on in New Jersey. Phil Murphy, his term is over. There's gonna be there are elections where looks like the Republican candidate has more possibilities of winning. We are already getting the results in the state of Virginia. That also is very important for the Democratic Party, and looks like Abigail Spanberger can be one of the winners if she already hasn't won yet. Then that is in California. There is all this gerrymandering vote going on. California is trying to respond to what Trump and Republican Party is doing in Texas with all these, maneuvers to then get a better result in the next elections and being able to undermine the other sector in the voting. So, this is how the Newsom wing of the Democratic Party is trying to fight back Trump, that is using the same method and doing all these maneuvers to win election, not so much for actually opposing Trump, but doing different maneuvers to you know get get this advantage on votes. So all this in New York City we have here, as probably many of you already know, Zohran Mamdani is going against former governor Andrew Cuomo, who lost the primary election. Now he's running as independent. Everyone makes this joke that he doesn't accept a no as an answer. And we also have the Republican, Curtis Silva. For many people, a funny character who has, his video, his appearance on the debate, but very conservative and very right wing in many aspects of social life. So we will see what's the result. There is a lot of expectations, and a lot of the polls and numbers have been showing that Mamdani is going to be the winner, but you never know. Today, elections are very hard to predict, and there has been so many surprises. So until we don't get the enough difference or the final results, we are going to still keep it open. Probably you already know, but Mamdani has grown a lot from someone very not well known at the level that he is now. He has been, a part of Queens. He represents, a mix of culture and politic diversity. He has immigrant roots, has been an activist. He defined himself as a democratic socialist. He's part of the DSA, but he's running in the slate of the Democratic Party, and a lot of people is already comparing him with AOC and Sanders. So there is this excitement because of the progressive agenda, but also an experience of seeing how the Democratic Party was able to co-opt them, bring him back to be part of the machine of the Democratic Party, and through them co-opt and put a lot of limits in the movement. His mayoral campaign has been focused on an affordable New York City. I work in a warehouse. I cannot make ends meet. I have to move 4 times or 5 because of raise of rent. Groceries are expensive. So definitely a lot of the topics that he's talking relates to a lot of people, to a lot of our, issues related to the cost of living and, also transit. Subway, buses. It ends at the end of the month having to pay all that to then, buses that takes 2 hours to arrive to a place, subway that don't function, properly most of the time. So he speaks to a lot of the needs that people has in everyday life, but also to bigger ideas. There is this idea of, he speaks to the populist agenda and focus on economics, etc. But while with contradictions, and especially in all this last period, a lot of people who has been mobilizing on the street, who has been marching against the genocide in Palestine and all that, has been supporting his campaign too. But before continuing, I'm gonna try to call one of our cameras in the voice, who's gonna join us by phone. So I have to set that up. So give me just a second. Her name is Lila Walter. She's part of the editorial board of Left Voice, and she has been writing a lot about this. Not only about the campaign in itself, but also the bigger picture of what this means for the Democratic Party, what this means for New York City, the progressives. So hopefully with Made we can talk, more about this larger picture and try to think, we have to see the results, where this goes. So yes, first we're gonna call Lila, and then we're gonna see if other cameras can join. We're gonna be, trying to have as soon as we can updates on our website and our social media. Some of us we're gonna be on the street to see if people is out celebrating or check, what's the temperature and the mood in the street once the result starts coming out. So I'm gonna try once more to see if I can connect. Let's see. Lila, are you there? Let me know if you can hear me. And while we wait for this communication, you should definitely check Left Voice. I can also show later in the screen some of our articles. And as soon as we hear back from Lila, we can continue the conversation. So yes, just a minute. I'm gonna see if I can show meanwhile. Lila, if you try talking, if you can say hi, so I check if your sound is coming out or not. No, it's not coming out. Okay, I'm gonna try again later. So we're gonna see what is being shown in the news. Just give me a second. Yeah, Lila is in Astoria, so I was really trying to being able to talk to her. But we can, try again later. It's almost 9 p.m., so polls are about to close here in New York City. So we're gonna start seeing what are the results and the votes between Zohran, Cuomo, Silva, and I guess Eric. I don't know why this page shows Eric Adams, but yes, he's there. Then there are some, I'm trying to see, okay, so in Virginia, it's confirmed that the candidate from the Democratic Party is winning. We can see here the results. She obtained 55% against 44% of the Republican Party. So definitely that's a win for the Democrats. It was very close at some point, but that is more than 10 points by now. So definitely confirmed. And in New Jersey, the Cheryl, the Democrat candidate, now it's refreshing. She's also winning. So, if also Mamdani wins, that's gonna be, very good news for the Democratic Party that is trying to figure out uh, how to overcome this crisis that they have. Let's see. Was AP is showing, and the Zohran rally, people are starting to set up. Some people was telling me that Cuomo's bunker is totally empty, that nobody was showing up. So definitely not much excitement around his campaign. So for what we were saying before about this election and what that means for the Democratic Party and etc. For all the progressive sector, this represents a breath of fresh air in U.S. politics. So far, it has been dominated by Donald Trump, by the far right, and every time that you engage in Instagram, TikTok, all these videos of ICE kidnapping people, terrorizing immigrants communities. So the fact that now this campaign is being successful is for a lot of young people, precarious workers, minorities and immigrants. This has shown a lot of excitement, and I think this excitement comes with expectation of seeing changes in how the life in your city is being felt and all the precarious conditions that we have to live day by day. But at the same time, this campaign is coming with contradictions. One of them is, he called himself a socialist, but his candidacy and his govern will depend a lot on the Democratic Party apparatus. That's a whole relationship that is not only Sanders' wing, but also more of the establishment. We already saw him with Hochul on the last main rally that they did recently. So, and Democrats are known for containing and diffusing left-wing movements inside the Democratic Party. And while in the beginning of his campaign, Mamdani has been more at the forefront of more of the ideas and bringing up Palestine and more progressive and left elements. Lately, he has softened more his radical positions many times, under the excuse that you already have the votes of the progressive, so you should try to win over the center. But it's as a price of downplaying the program or setting back some of the more progressive elements of the campaign. I'm gonna respond some messages in the time. So, for example, all this idea of trying to show him, I don't know, for me to the fact that he has been in the New York Times podcast or in national news saying like he apologized to the police that the New York City, the NYPD is not racist when it's a very racist institution, that he's not gonna cut funding to the NYPD. The NYPD has a budget, if I'm not wrong, of $6 billion and has been, has a long record and long history of repressing protests, immigrants, black people. So definitely, the fact that he's moving away from those ideas, are part of the signs that it's not about him in itself, but show how the Democratic Party always eat up any kind of progressive element that can emerge on on their apparatus. So yes, a lot of expectations, a lot of hope for many people. The position is Cuomo, definitely not an exciting one. Okay, so polls are starting to appear. Give me a second to see if I can show them. Uh, and looks like, no surprises here. Okay, so you can see here on the left, that is polls closed on 9 p.m. This is the CBS News. They're showing that was updated 1 minute ago. And 36% is already in. And Mamdani is having a clear leaning. He has 400,000, over 400,000 votes, which represent 51%, and Cuomo 100,000 votes, almost 100,000 votes under, which is 39.57%. This is mainly what people has been expecting, a 10% difference. So let's see how this continues. There was this expectation or this request, for Silva to quit the race. He's only getting 8%, so not even adding that. By now, Como would arrive to Zohran Mamdani. He's having 60,000 votes. So, yeah, so far it looks like in the center of capitalism, of neoliberalism, where Wall Street is located, all these skyscrapers, we might have a mayor that called himself a democratic socialist that has been attacked by the right wing, calling him a communist, calling him a socialist, and many times a lot of racist and Islamophobic comments. Probably soon we should check what Trump is saying about all this. He said recently that he had no choice but to vote for Andrew Cuomo. So, this endorsement shows how right, to the right is Cuomo and the Democratic establishment, that Trump in itself doesn't have any issue to vote one of these Democrats. There has been all these threats, that ICE is going to ramp up their activity in New York City, that the National Guard is might also come to New York City. It has been already in LA, in Chicago, and many other, in Portland, and that is all these attempts of Trump to move the situation to the right, to militarize cities, which can show that he's being strong or having a hard hand, but at the same time it shows part of the contradiction, that for him to establish his influence has to do this kind of more authoritarian moves, which at the same time contradictory shows a contradiction about his forces and how he's doing the government. So I'm gonna leave this page open so that we can keep checking the results. But if you all give me a second, I will try once more to see if I can connect with Lila. So you don't only have to listen to me, and we can also listen to other person. Um, and we continue seeing the results. And if you have, any comment or ideas or how you are feeling, seeing that Mamdani is winning, also share in the chat. Put your comment, questions. How do you feel about it? If you want to know what the voice position are, everything you want, just type it while I try to figure out this call. Dum, dum. Let's see if this time can work. So please be patient while we figure out this. Also, if you have tweets, reaction from the far right or something that I should check and see what's going on, feel free to send it. CBS. I'm gonna refresh just in case. We can also check. Let's see what the New York Times is saying. Okay, the New York Times is highlighting the victory of Virginia's governor who went in a anti-Trump campaign. Let's check this. Let's see if now Lila can hear me. That sounds like a no. Let me check here. Ta-da. Because definitely, seeing all these results that the Democrats are having, definitely tomorrow they're gonna have more excitement. We're gonna rethink their strategy. They're gonna still see how to prepare themselves towards the midterms and thinking more in general their opposition to the Republican Party. And so far there has been some elements of more activist attempts, but so far, most of the Democratic Party, or at minimum the conservative sector, is more focused on election, gerrymandering, and of course, no mobilizations that are massive, but doesn't break with the normalcy and create so much disruption. Sorry, I'm trying again to see if the call works. Yes, I guess sometime this sometimes this doesn't work. Yeah. Yeah, no. Looks like you're not gonna be able to talk with Lila this time. But, we can always have an interview soon. And she always write about, national politics, Democratic Party. So we're gonna have another chance to listen from her, or do an interview, or do a live stream. Because also, as I was saying, and that's why I also wanted to talk to her, because the Democratic Party is having different wings, how to rethink their crisis, or how to fight back against Trump and the far right. Eh, and we have seen lately also a more progressive wing who has been more to the left, and one of them is uh, Johnson, the mayor from Chicago, that in the last No Kings mobilization, that numbers says that between 5 to 7 million people mobilized across the country, making it one of the largest mobilization in one single day in the United States. And in that mobilization, Brandon Johnson and other sectors has also brought up this idea of a general strike in the US, saying how to fight back against Trump and this militarization. It's not enough with mobilization, it's not enough with elections, but we need aspects of class struggle. And so why this is happening right now, and how real is this? No, it's not easy to call to general strike that involves the whole of the US or most of it, and it hasn't happened never in the history of the US. But it speaks to a phenomenon in labor movement that has been growing through all these years, especially in the shift of class, shifts in consciousness, the working class and oppressed sectors, and especially including also immigrant workers, etc. You know, if we go back, we can even trace to the 2008 crisis, but I think since 2017, 18, with all the teachers' strikes wave, with many of them were without union approval, so there were wildcat strikes, so they went on a strike without the blessing, of the union. So then the pandemic happens, when all the large sector of the working class starting to be called essential workers, and they have seen how we are the ones who run the society. The rich are hiding, are running away, are going to the beach, etc. And the ones who are putting the bodies, the people who are losing relatives, friends, and putting at risk our own lives, was us, the working class, and we have seen a strike activity that we haven't seen in decades. It's still not, like in the 30s or other moments of acute class struggle in the US, but yes, increasing, especially what many people, and in the voice we have called Generation U, they say, unions, despite the US having 10% unionized, even less now, of the working class with a union. That is, according to some polls, like 60 or 70, between the changes, but it's between 60 and 70% of people who supports union, who wants to have a union. And so all this is part of why people is talking about a general strike right now. We are in a shutdown that is affecting SNAP, and that affects millions of people in the United States. A lot of working class folks that are doing minimum wage, that are having very few resources to make ends meet, and SNAP has been very key for this sector to be able to have, do groceries, feed their kids, and a lot of people is already discussing if it is food or the rent. So the last shutdown, uh, Trump ended it because of the threat of um, workers going on a strike. In that moment, it had a huge impact, and only the threat of going on a strike, which was with Sarah Nelson, and she has been again talking that to defend the democracy, what we need is go on general strike. So there are all these ideas of workers being able to show their power as they have been doing in the last years. There is all this discussion of that the working class has moved towards Trump, and a lot of these debates, but show that the working class is advancing, is getting more active. The idea of a strike maybe 15 years ago was very foreign or very absent as a method, as a concept. So the fact that it's growing and growing is a very positive uh, aspect, and it's something that we need to encourage and take advantage of each time that these discussions uh, appears in mainstream debates. Even though if these leaders are actually gonna to push to make this happen, that's always a question that unfortunately we know the response, but sometimes the pressure can force them to be more active and encourage this, or at least open a space in which people can. Oh, people is talking about the general strike. What if we go on a strike at our workplace? What if in our city we go on a strike? So this change a little the framework of how to fight back Trump. Um, okay, now 52% in, and then he continues. Before it was, I think, 10%. Now it's 8. Still a significant difference. Um, Still now it's 95,000 votes. So if this continues, looks like he's gonna be the winner. Let's see what other sites are saying. Yeah, a lot of people is showing the victory of also Democrats in other places. Some other things to highlight from these elections. I want to see if I can find the numbers in one of these our news outlets. Voters also in New York City, the New York Times. But yes, so when we see, the amount of people who vote in this election, if we go back here, 52% is already in. I think it's important to to think again in the increase of to understand the phenomena and all this energy behind Zohran, despite the opinions you might have about his campaign, is that we are seeing, and probably this is gonna be confirmed once we have the final numbers, but we are seeing the largest voter turnout since 2000. and won. It's in the last, yeah, I don't remember the exact numbers. I'm trying to see if I found it here in an article, but some people are saying that almost 2 million people might vote in this election. 1.4 million people voted in 2001. That was the largest one, post 9/11 and all these, you know, right wing campaign of, not a progressive campaign. And in this moment, we're gonna have a higher turnout, probably 2 million people, with that shows an agenda that push to improve the working class conditions. And we can also think this excitement compared to what has been the Sanders moment, which has been, into 2016, where a lot of young people went out for Sanders, has expectation on his campaign, or he being able to, not take over the Democratic Party, but use the machine to maybe be president or something like that, and get more influence. At the end, it didn't happen. But this time, if there is we can think, parallel, of course, the idea of, the socialist idea. What would they call socialism? Um, the progressive agenda, all this idea of, free healthcare, which is something that Mamdani is not saying. All this progressive agenda now is combined with a, a growing anti-imperialist sentiment, in which, 15 years ago, talking about Palestine or Israel, it would have been, is still, no, like a thing. But in this moment, people would try to avoid that because it can make you lose votes, etc. But we are in a moment in which the urgency to improve our living conditions is also connected to the urgency with stop the genocide and the occupation and the siege. Before, the Zionist regime was impossible to touch or question or bring any kind of salt towards it. And now that has changed a lot, especially in the youth. There are a lot of different polls how even the base of the Democratic Party and the voters, Palestine is a very important issue. Still, with the limits, etc., but something that was unthinkable before, the fact that the US has played a major role in the genocide and continues with all these, so-called, I don't even want to name them, peace agreements, ceasefire, etc., because there is nothing peaceful in Trump's plans. But yes, it is combination of progressive sentiment and, like in the moments of Sander, but cross with this idea of fighting against US imperialist policies that, these 2 years, Palestine has been very at the forefront, but also is the competition with China, is also the tariff, is also what's going on with Venezuela, all the increasing of the military operations in the Caribbean, which nobody knows, but the fact that they have been mobilizing so many military personnel and different ways to start not the war with Venezuela, but yes, to put a lot of pressure in the government, like maybe looking to see if the right wing take advantage of this and try to go through a regime change, etc. But everyone is seeing how US imperialist agenda is having shortcomings and is not getting the support of the people. And when people say socialism, there are different point of view, different ways of thinking, but something for sure is the fact that people are saying no to capitalism. So it's this search of what we are living now. We don't want that anymore. Capitalism has failed. Climate change, wars, exploitation, living in precarious conditions, etc. And socialism sounds like something appealing. For some means welfare state, a state that is more present. This is more the kind of the Sanders and Mamdani's vision that regulates capitalism, put more control into the rich. They tax the rich and then distribute some of all that wealth and see without changing the basis or the core of the system, that is labor exploitation, that is imperialism, that is a system based on which a sector has to work to survive and the other can live from all this wealth that is created by the society. When they fight against the 1%, they mean the ultra rich, they don't mean all the capitalists. And it's still in the capitalist framework. It's not about a workers' government or something in those lines. So, but yes, it's clear that people is rejecting capitalism still with not a clear response towards it. At least by now, mainly going through the rich. If that means tax the rich, or when we saw, UAW with all the shirts of Eat the Rich, Sean Fain doing the live stream with Eat the Rich. So all that speaks how the wide sector of the working class are tired of this gap between workers and the rich. And something that we were talking in the beginning has been the, and this is something that we're gonna have to follow, because let's check how this goes. I'm gonna refresh just in case. So 60% in is still 8% different. It's still around 100,000 votes. The tendency continues, and the New Jersey Democrat candidate is confirmed as a winner. She reached the 57%, has 300,000 votes over the Republican candidate. So, it's a good day for the Democratic Party. And we have to see what's going to be the response from the far right. We are in the midst of the first year of Trump presidency that is very different from the previous one. It's very different from Biden's 4 years. This is trying to let me check something, because I don't know if this is not updating, I think, so that you can see the results at the same time that I'm seeing them. Okay, yes, I think now you can see them. Yes, 8%. Zohran Mamdani is leaning. I don't know what difference should be enough for him to be called a victory. Contest could reshape. Yeah, the other news that has been all over is this accident. 3 people die after a UPS plane crash in Louisville. 11 people injured. I used to work at UPS, so I was checking And Dick Cheney die. I guess also that's a good news. Um, but yeah, as I was saying, we have to check how the right wing is gonna respond to all this, because in the last days there has been all these, last they have been supporting, but last minute tweets, interviews, videos, and everything, no articles of all these right wingers and rich people throwing their support to Cuomo and Elon Musk, Trump, and a long list. And we have seen, as compared to what's going on in Portland and other places, what happened with ICE in Chinatown is a small example of what we can expect on these days. I think Trump at some point was like, okay, I'm giving up. Mamdani is gonna win, so he will try to use this as an example of, why the left, the progressive sucks, and they should use this as an excuse to go even harder against New York City. I'm checking New York Times. Dun, dun. New York City election. Oh, okay. The Associated Press already called Zohran Mamdani as the winner of the New York City mayoral race. This is 75% of the votes in. Okay, Zohran Mamdani won. Difference of 9% with Cuomo. So yeah, let's start getting ready to see all the different reaction towards it. I don't know if my face is covering you the map. Maybe a little. Let's see if I can move myself. I'm gonna go to the center for a bit. Okay, here you can see the map. I'm still blocking it a bit. Staten Island, not surprised, mainly Cuomo. I'm from Bushwick, so I'm checking Bushwick. But now I'm in Astoria and I can hear some screams. Probably some people celebrating. But yes, we have, a new moment is starting. But it's gonna happen, January 1st when he takes office. But yes, we have a social democrat as the next mayor of New York City. Let's see if all these rich people are planning to leave the city, like in Manhattan, in Midtown, Battery Park, and all the, if you can see a map, all the parts that are the richest, like Upper East Side, Midtown. All of those are the places that Cuomo won. Probably we should expect these people to leave the city. So not mad about that. But yeah, it's gonna be a mayor with a lot of contradictions. There are gonna be a lot of excitement around his campaign, and we have to see how things develop. But the mayoral position has its contradictions in itself. You have to run a society, and Zohran even in his speech says, "I don't govern for the people who vote me. I govern for the whole city, for all New Yorkers," and that includes the rich, the far right, and more conservative sectors. So that means that this is already, it's gonna be a government that has to negotiate with the billionaires, the rich, the police, and all these, you know, more far right sectors, in the spirit of governing the city. We have to see the reaction of Wall Street, etc. But he has been having all these meetings to show or calm down, this anxiety that some uh, rich people has been having, to see how to the left is going to be this campaign. But he already has been making efforts to bring some ease to this. Give me a second, I'm checking this. Okay. So, something that we have to think is, was, despite all the limits and contradiction that his him being the mayor will have, that is something that we might not have to wait to January 1st when he takes position. That is the reaction of Trump. And if Trump's attacks send the National Guard, send ICE, or cuts funding, there are so many ways that Trump can say, I'm going to attack this progressive leftist-ish mayor. So what's going to be our response toward that? Because whether you support Zohran or not, I think it's clear that we have to fight all the attempts to the right of discipline New York City. New York City is a city known for being pro-union, progressive, with a lot of immigrant movements, etc. So when we think how to fight back Trump or defend, if there are some progressive measures that we want to defend, how that has to be shown on the streets. It has to be shown through our unions, in our workplaces, universities, and not waiting for things to come from above, not waiting or expecting that alliances with the Democratic Party or the same people who brought us the situation that we are at are going to be the ones who are actually going to fight back Trump. And I think, even if it's a small example, but everyone is seeing or sharing the video, or even making shirts of the woman who stood in front of the ICE truck to stop them of arresting and moving people towards the ICE building. Shows how that is energy to fight back. That is energy to defend the immigrants. A lot of enthusiasm to improve our life conditions, which, despite of a lot of the rhetoric, will imply to fight back against the bosses, against the rich, organizing our workplaces, because yes, tax the rich, take all the money you can from them, but the actual fight against them is from where they're making all that money, where are they getting all these billions, and many times is from exploiting Blanca brown folks, poor working class. So all the fight against Trump will show again where our movement is at. I think, especially in a very pro-union city, we have seen in this last massive mobilization that there has been contingent of unions mobilizing. That has been part of this idea of how we defend our democratic rights, how we defend any attempt of Trump of challenging this election, because beyond the result is what people has decided to vote, and Trump has nothing to say in this election and should stay out of New York City. So it's going to be up to us, up to the unions, people in the street, to defend uh, not only the city, but especially the ones who are being under attack from the queer community, immigrants, especially undocumented folks, and we have also seen all the attacks against the Palestinian movement. They're gonna continue. Trump is, despite all this temporary ceasefire under a lot of pressure and more thinking on his own government rather than the Palestinian people, we continue having these incidents here because he continued to send billions to Israel. He continues supporting the ongoing siege that is going on Gaza, and we also have seen how he has been attacking the universities, trying to have more control over them, proposing more funding or threatening to take out some of the funding if they don't comply with his ideas, with his government. And here in New York City, there's going to be a first challenge, I think, no, for Zohran to figure out how to react. That is the Fire for campaign that's going on in CUNY. Forajan has been fired for being very pro-Palestine activists. Like a lot of them, people know that they are very supportive of fighting against the genocide, etc. And CUNY has been part of this agenda of going against the pro-Palestine movement, attacking students, attacking agents, attacking because this is not only against the Palestinian movement, but it's also is about the right to protest, is about free speech, is about being able, to express your idea, your ideology. So an attack to all activists, especially the four ones who are fired, is part of that. And in the last two rallies, not the last two, but the last one and the one that happened at the Brooklyn College, this element has been part of the speeches of members of the PSC union, also by Sanders and Mamdani. They have spoke against the attacks in the universities, especially CUNY. A lot of people are calling this what can be a new wave of McCarthyism, to point out how our democratic rights are in danger in New York City, and in a place that is very loved, that has changed the life of hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers, that is CUNY. So definitely that's going to be a test that we have to see what's the reaction of Zohran and the movement to continue fighting to reinstate the fire for in CUNY. I'm going to update this because I got too much into talking. Let's see the numbers. Okay, okay, 83% of votes in. Yes, it's 9%. The difference, over 100,000 votes. No, even more, 150,000 votes. If you add Curtis Silva votes, you will be in 48.6. So still, Zohran would have won. Total reported is 1.8 million votes, which is close of the 2 million votes that are expected. And as I mentioned before, this is the largest vote participation at this point more than 2001. So um, this express, a different air, and that sometimes if we only see what Trump is doing and all his steps, can give an idea that everything is to the right, things are very difficult, complicated, it's hard to fight back, etc. But then, if even if it is an electoral result and it's through the election, shows that millions of people want something different, because now this is gonna try to be the fact that someone calling himself a democratic socialist, who has an immigrant background, who is Muslim and has been under attack of all this Islamophobia that we have been seeing, can win to the establishment and a former governor of New York, that can win despite all the attacks of the far right, that can you present aspect of an agenda that speaks to broader sector, definitely will encourage people across the country to do something similar. But as we have been saying, all this has its limit. That if all this campaign is gonna go through the Democratic Party, if this is about rebuilding or recreating prestige or some kind of hopes into the Democratic Party, this is bringing, it's moving backwards, the movement, instead of after all this what Biden campaign and the fact that everyone has seen the Democratic Party as part of the genocide and of the imperialist aspect of the United States. That should open the door for the left, for the socialists, to actually take advantage of this and not go back to the Democratic Party, but to be more in the offensive of the idea of having our own organization, no? A working class party that fights for socialism, that is a party of class independence, that is a party that is rooted in labor, in unions, in universities, and we fight with our own tools. You can use elections, Congress, and all that, but that's not going to be the key that will put, to stop the far right and to stop all the, the capitalist system, which we have to remember that the US, is losing its hegemony at international level. So we are not going to go towards peaceful times. Actually, it's the opposite. All the tendencies, the war in Ukraine continues. What's going to happen with Israel and Palestine is still open. That is all the militarization in Venezuela. So the economy is not showing very positive signs. The tariff, very contradictory. So we're going to have to fight back. We're going to have to fight in the streets. We're going to have to rely on the labor movement, uniting with other sectors, especially students who have been taking up the fight for Palestine, who have been mobilizing, occupying universities, but with a different strategy, a strategy of class independence, a strategy of putting the working class at the center and not relying in alliances with sector of the rich. So I guess, that is no surprises. Zohran Mamdani won. Let's refresh once more. But yeah, it's getting closer to the 2 million votes. Mamdani won. Let's check Wall Street Journal. New Jersey and Virginia elect Democratic governors. Record turnout in New York City. So yeah, I think it's going to be part of the analysis for the next following days. what means this for the Democratic Party, what this means as a rejection of the first year of Trump. That has been a very convulsive one. Um, New York Times is saying that Democratic Socialist wins mayor office in a surge of anti-establishment discontent. So what Trump made fall through the right, this is saying that Mamdani is doing to the left. Um, mm, mm. But yes, let's continue seeing how this goes. Let's see what are the different reactions to it, what we can expect in the next days, and check the voice, check our Instagram, check our website. In case you haven't seen it, this is our website. I'm gonna refresh. So we couldn't talk with Lila today, but here is the last magazine. You're introducing the Voice magazine, the Mamdani moment, and the fight against the far right. And in the bottom, you can see, we did a virtual roundtable to see what different socialists and leftists thinks that is the way forward for socialists. We talked with Kachama Sawan, Charlie Mueller from DSA, Hakan Yilmaz, and Lila Walter, who we couldn't talk today. I also recommend the article by Jimena Goldman, The King, the Mayor, and the Working Class in the Fight for New York. We didn't talk about this today, but among the Democratic Party, there is all this sector behind the abundance agenda that also has sparked some debates. So definitely an article to read. You see, this says the reactionary patchwork, so you can already tell what's our idea, and also to follow what's going on in other countries, how to fight and win against the right, lesson from the workers' movement again in Milei's Argentina, that speaks the struggles going on in Argentina to a very important ally of Trump. That for a different episode, Trump gave all this money, billions of dollars to Argentina. At the same time, that is not funding SNAP, and that has to do a lot with the fact that the president of Argentina is a very Zionist and very far right-wing government. But yeah, this is all for today. Get ready to be in the streets, because any change that we want to see in New York City and in the country won't come from elections. It's going to come from organizing, for fighting in the streets, organizing our unions, workplaces, and any attempt of going against our democratic rights, attacks by Trump or militarizing in New York City, we have to be out in the street. So follow the voice, join us, and see you next time.